Hello to all of our listeners and welcome back to The Parent Solution. I'm your host, Kimberly, and before we dive into any material today, I just wanted to drop a quick note to all of you regarding the makeup of The Parent Solution. Sometimes in life and in business, we're faced with some difficult decisions, and this past week brought one such difficult decision into the playing field, so to speak. Jamie, my co-host up until this point, has made the decision to step down from the Parent Solution, and so I will be carrying on alone for right now. The roadmap, of course, remains much the same, with a little bit of a twist. It's now just me, with the occasional guest. So I do hope that all of our listeners thus far will continue to enjoy the podcast here, and my hope is that it will be just as helpful and just as informative, if with a bit of a different spin on things. Without further ado, let's get rolling. So today's a bit of a hot button topic, and it's a bit of a touchy subject, for sure. So today I'm chatting about divorced and separated parents and what effects this kind of disintegrated relationship can have on a child, particularly when it comes to the academic portion of their lives. And what sorts of steps can be taken to lessen the potential emotional and psychological impacts from this sort of unfortunate circumstance. Coming from an educator's perspective, it's a little bit different than coming from a more emotional perspective. As an educator, obviously, it's important to understand that children have lives and students have lives outside of school. That might sound obvious, but it needs to be stated nonetheless. I think it's unfortunate how some relationships just don't really work out. It's often a breakdown in the relationship, and it's been a long time coming. People don't really wake up one day and decide that they want a divorce. It takes time and effort and planning. Lots of people, particularly men, stay together because it's just less hassle. Women is because of the kids and the family duties. But that's a whole other issue. What I'm here to talk about today is what happens when the relationship isn't working anymore, and it begins to disintegrate, and the decision is made that the relationship is better off terminated. So when that decision is made, it's not just about the parents. It's not just about the two partners that are there. It's also about any children that may be involved. And so that's our topic as of today. A lot of questions may pop up for the parents, should we stay together for the kids? That's often the question and the glue, so to speak, that holds a lot of parents or partners together. Other parents may find that divorce is their only option, and regardless of how old their children are, that's their only solution. Parents, may worry about how their children are going to deal with the divorce or separation. And in part, we're here to talk about some solutions for that today. Some kids do rebound faster than others. I do think that age is a factor in the weight that a divorce may carry. I think the younger the child is, the less they're going to be able to understand. So anyone that's under 3 or 4 as a child, that's not going to be quite as impactful as if you're looking at a child that's 7 to 15 in that sensitive sort of stage of growing up and of really getting their social skills and their life together in that sense. So this is the Parent Solution. We don't just like to talk about problems here. We do like to talk about solutions. So I have come up with a little bit of a list of things for you guys in terms of thinking about solutions for these sorts of kind of trying circumstances, whether you're a parent or whether you're an educator. So the first thing I think is really important is consistency within the classroom and at home. Things change. That doesn't mean that people need to, the different situations may mean that, things are a little bit tense and things are a little bit strained at home, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be that way in the classroom. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be that way in interactions with other people. And even at home, things may be strained between the partners, but they don't need to be the same way between the children, because it's not the child's fault or the children's fault that a divorce or a separation is happening. Another thing I think is really important to mention, again, regardless of whether you're a parent or an educator, is boundaries and respect for personal space and privacy. If a child doesn't want to talk or be around or participate, you got to respect that, as hard as it might be. Now, obviously, this comes with limits. The children don't just get a free pass to just not participate or not talk or not process their feelings, of course, but you have to have a certain level of boundary and a certain level of respect. Whether you are a parent or an educator in a classroom, you've got to make sure that you're respecting that person's personal space and that child's personal space. And respect their need for privacy. Meeting them at their level is really important. And that kind of leads to my next one is creating a feeling of personal safety and security. There's a huge trust factor in that. Some things that I think are really good to foster that feeling of safety and security. You just just listen first and foremost. That's the biggest thing, and don't offer any sort of advice, perhaps, if they're not looking for it, if they don't ask for it. You literally just have to sit there and listen. Children who are going through a divorce of their parents or partners, whatever it might be, they are going through a lot of processing. And when if they do decide that they want to talk about it to you, you've got to make sure that you sit there and give them and respect them and give them the space that they need, hold that space that they need, just listen to them. Let them be honest, really honest. Keep in mind here that, presuming that you're the adult in this conversation and you're listening to this child, you're the adult. They're not. They don't quite know how to process all of their feelings quite yet. They don't know how to really deal with a lot of what's going on, whether it be in their head or their heart or in their mind. They don't really know how to deal with that. You got to let them be honest and work through their own feelings. And sometimes, I know for myself, I'm a verbalizer. I have to process things out loud, which means I have to talk to myself. So some children are the same way. Acknowledging those feelings and acknowledging the things that they are saying, even though they may be hurtful to you, whether you're the parent or the educator, even though they might be hurtful to you, you have to brush that aside. Remember, you're the adult; they're not. If a child has come to you and needs to share something with you, or wants to share something with you, you need to make sure you acknowledge their feelings, and give them that space, to feel like they are safe and respected, and like they have a space and a place to go, to kind of get things off their chest. That kind of leads me to my fourth one. Make talking about the divorce or the separation an ongoing process, right? Whether you're the educator, if you're the parent, obviously this is easier because you are in the home and you're with your child presumably a lot more. But as an educator, we spend a lot of time with our kids, with our students, and they're going to be dealing with it on an ongoing basis. It's not a one and done thing. It's not something that, they come to class one day and then they leave class and it's done. No, it's an ongoing process. And depending on the willingness of the parents, to how they're dealing with it, it may be a shorter process or a longer process. And it may be something that goes on for a couple of years. You have to be able to allow them to process the fact that it's going to take a while. So being available on a continual basis for consulting or for just listening, if that's what's necessary, is really important. Separating the feelings between the parents versus what the child feels. If as an educator, if a student confides in you, that's something that you want to be able to do is to separate the feelings between how the parents feel about each other versus how the parents feel about the child or the student. Separate responsibilities for circumstances themselves as well. A lot of children, the fear is that they're going to take on the responsibility for, the divorce is my fault. The divorce is something that I caused. Separating that responsibility from the parents versus what the child and the student is responsible for, is really important, I think. And that's going to really impact their education and how well they're able to focus in class, really. Because if they're busy dealing with this painful process, it's not going to be something that they're able to deal with easily. And that's going to be something that affects them academically. As an educator, you want to make sure you're understanding of all of these things. And that's really the key point at the conclusion of my solutions. You have to make sure that you're understanding of these things. Like I said, kids have lives and students have lives outside of school. It's not the only thing. And I know that's obvious. I know we as educators all know that. But it's important to state it again, because oftentimes it goes kind of unheard and it doesn't really sink in the same way, I think, as when it's said out loud. The last solution that I wanted to talk about is just a simple one, rather, and it's reaching out for professional help when it's appropriate. If you as a parent or an educator feel that you cannot handle the emotions and the things that your child or your student is dealing with, don't be afraid to reach out. You don't have to be an expert on everything. It's not something that you have to know how to deal with automatically. We're all, as people, growing and learning, and it's okay not to know how to handle something. As I tell my students, the shame is not in asking for help. The shame is in not asking for help when you know you need it, because it's your responsibility. And we want to try to impart this to our children and our students as well. It's your own personal responsibility to speak up when you need help with something. And if you don't get it, and there's no shame in asking for help. There's shame in not asking for help when you know you need it. Divorces are, often an emotionally trying time. It can be hard, depending on the relationship with the parents. It can be very hard, but you've got to put your kids first or your students first. These all might seem like easy solutions. They're obviously things that are a lot easier for me to sit here and talk about than to actually put into practice. And personally, I think that it's always that way because, hello, that's life. But you got to ask yourself, isn't it worth it for your students? Isn't it worth it for your kids? Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I appreciate you all. Remember, new episodes premiere every Tuesday at 5 a.m. EST on Spreaker. You can find us on almost all of your favorite podcast apps as well. This is The Parent Solution. Remember, this is your one-stop shop for all things educational.